Welcome back to Bad Attitude C10. Today we'll be going over our electronic EFI fuel regulator from Fuel Lab. In our last video, we went over why we chose to go with the brushless pump, and I did touch base on some of the characteristics of our Prodigy pump. One of the benefits was the variable speed control. And this little 8AN EFI electronic fuel pressure regulator is going to give us the capability to completely control the output of our variable pump. So let's break this thing down. So I'm now sharing the page on Fuel Lab for the description of our regulator, and I'm just going to hit some of the key points. And the first thing is that the use of this regulator with our pump, it actually becomes a standalone system. So we don't, depend on any type of help from the ECU or anything of that nature to control the speed and the output of our pump. It's just the regulator and the pump, and that's it. The pump that we have and the regulator are both compatible with gasoline, diesel, methanol, and ethanol. So in our case, we'll be running E85. The other great thing about this product is it's backed by a limited lifetime warranty. So let's actually look at the components to this regulator. At first glance, this regulator may look like all the other ones that are out there on the market, but that couldn't be further from the truth. It does incorporate an adjustment screw with a jam nut on the top, and the regulator of our choice has an 1/8" MPT boost reference port, since we will be running the centrifugal supercharger. It also incorporates an 1/8" MPT gauge port. So in the gauge port location, we're actually going to be using that for a fuel sending unit. In addition, Fuel Lab offers this regulator setup with either 6AN or 8AN inlet and return fittings. For our application, we chose to go with the 8AN. Now, the fittings are installed from the factory, and they recommend that you do not remove them. The reason for that is the 8AN return fitting actually has a patented proprietary fitting that is outfitted with relief valving to create back pressure. This back pressure is needed to make this regulator do its magic when it comes to the electronical side. So let's take a look at that. If you notice in this diagram, it actually shows the relief valving in the return fitting. Now below that, on the inner structure of the regulator in the center, you'll see that there is a pressure transducer. That is to monitor the return line back pressure. And when it's monitoring that, it then communicates with the electrical packaging, and then it travels and sends a signal to our pump through this 4-pin connector. Now, 2 of these pins are going to be responsible for power and ground. The other one is going to go to the trigger or signal wire of the pump. In addition, there's also a wire that you can use for data logging. So we'll get into that here in a minute. Now, in the last video covering our Prodigy pump, I showed you that there were 3 terminals on the pump. One was black for the ground, one was red for the hot or the positive, and the center one was the yellow terminal, and that was the signal or trigger wire. Now, this will be the wire that basically would control the variable speed of the pump. Now, one thing I wanted to wait to, discuss with y'all until now was this. Now, if you're not wanting to have to go through and use your ECU or a special regulator to pulse width modulate the variable speed of this pump, you can opt to actually do this with a toggle switch, and just when the toggle switch is open, the pump would run at full flow capacity. When you're driving it on the street and just putting around and you don't need the full flow of the pump, you can actually turn the switch on and send it to ground, and by doing that, it would actually make the pump run at 60%. So since you start to do that, that means the pump's not going to be running balls to the wall while you're just putting around and building heat, because the pump's just running full bore the whole time, and you're flowing fuel that's not being needed, and it's having to return back to the tank. And this could actually lead to heating up your fuel system and causing vapor lock issues and even cavitation to your pump. So that's one of the good things about having a variable speed pump. Now in our case, I'm going to be using this Holley Terminator stuff for the first time ever, and I was kind of panicking about knowing how to set up the table for it by using throttle position sensor or RPM. And that's when Tanner brought to my attention that, hey, we have a regulator that's basically like a smart regulator. So now let's look at the way that it's wired and how it will actually work. So the wiring diagram I'm sharing with y'all now can be found under the instruction tab about the regulator on the Fuel Labs website. Now, it's going to show here that your power or 12-volt source wire is going to be red. The ground would be black. The white wire would be the one that goes to the yellow terminal on our Prodigy pump for the variable speed control. So you could call it a trigger or a signal wire, however you want to do it. In addition, there is also a green wire that we could utilize to our ECU, whether it be the Holly terminator, big stuff, whatever it may be, and that's for data logging. Now guys, in this diagram there is only one fuel rail, but in our application there will be two. So the path of our fuel will flow through a pre-filter before the pump, and then to go through the pump, out of the pump into a post-filter. From that point, it'll travel through a hose up to the front of the vehicle and then reach a Y or a T and split off to the two fuel rails in our case. After it goes through the fuel rails, it will then go back through another T or a Y, and then that hose will go into the inlet of our regulator. At this point, the fuel is going to encounter the back pressure created by the relief valving in our return fitting, and the transducer will start monitoring this pressure, and the electronics package in the regulator will then dictate whether it needs to speed up or slow down the pump's output. Now, when the fuel then starts to go through the line to return to the tank, Tanner wanted me to stress, guys, this needs to return to your tank, factory style tank or a fuel cell. It cannot be returned into a surge tank. Using this method can create false pressure signals and affect the way the regulator operates. Here's a little more information over the fuel pressure regulators that Fuel Lab has to offer. One of the other cool features I wanted to explain to y'all about this EFI electronic regulator we'll be using from Fuel Lab is if the electrical components were ever to fail, it would just default to maximum output. So now let's check out the actual star of the show. So as you can see here, our part number is 52902-1. The color is the regulator is black, and we'll go ahead and unbox it now and put the smaller things to the side, and then we'll go over the components. Now, each boxed item comes with a Fuel Lab instruction card, and on the back there you got a code you can scan in, or you can just go to the website and go to the product you're looking at and hit the instructions tab. So as you can see, it comes with the bracket and it comes with the little data cable, and then it comes with the regulator itself. Now, the regulator is in a plastic bag, and it already does have the fittings installed like I mentioned before, and they do put some protective little plastic caps on them, and the fittings on ours are black, so it's kind of cool, it's sleek, and this is a little 4-pin connector, and this side would be the inlet fitting. Now, I'm going to continue unboxing this stuff and just time lapse it and get to the point to where we can start assembling our regulator. So I'm going to start off by showing y'all, as I mentioned with the pump, that all the Fuel Lab products have a serial number, and they are limited lifetime warranty. So what we're going to do is they furnish this bracket, and it can only go on one way, and the hardware does come with some small lock washers. I am still going to use some 243 Loctite, and that's just because I'm anal about stuff and I didn't want it to back out, and it is just blue Loctite. Now the screws I'm going to put in just a little snug, and they recommend that they're torqued to like 20 to 45 inch ounces. That's right, guys, inch ounces. I was like, oh shit, I ain't got nothing to go that small, so I went and dug out one of the gun building tools I had, which was an inch pound, I guess you can say, screwdriver that measures torque, and the lowest it would go was 6. And I'm like, well, I guess 6 inch pounds would be better than not torquing it at all. So I went on ahead to set it on 6 and went on ahead and snugged them up and torqued them to 6 inch pounds. Now, just in case any of y'all are interested, this little torque screwdriver or nut driver is from a company called Real Avid. So now we're going to go ahead and move on to our adjustment screw, and we're going to put it in. Now guys, I am going to put some silicone lubricant on it, and I found that this stuff, even though a lot of people say it's not recommended to use on metal, it's waterproof and it also prevents corrosion. And since this is actually just a part that you're going to tighten up and then jam down with a jam nut, I've had good success with it, and I've just continued to use it. So we're going to snug up the adjustment screw, and still it has a small amount of tension, and then we're just going to put the jam nut on and move from there. So up next, if you look, this is going to be the boost reference port, and they give you a little barb fitting. I'm going to opt to go ahead and put a 3AN I guess you can call it 1/8 inch MPT on the other side. And since it is pipe thread, I am going to go ahead and put some pipe sealer on it. Now the pipe dope I'm using, I prefer over the Teflon tape, but I didn't have it in the house last time, that's why I used the tape. So just a little dab will do you, and just put it in there and snug it up, and then I'll tighten it down with the ratchet. So as you can see here, that little dab just put a very small thin layer of sealer all the way around. Up next will be our data cable, and it will have a little notch or a groove in it, and you'll find the same groove on the base of the regulator. So you'll just plug in the 4-pin connector, as you see here, and push it in until it's firmly seated, and then tighten up the K-knurled nut. And then it's done. So here you can see our 4 wires that will be going into our regulator, and as I mentioned before, it's the red is a positive, the black is a ground, the green will go to your data logging, and the white would be for your speed controller of our pump. So there it is, all ready to be installed. So until next time, I'll catch you later.